While I was in the hospital alone with no visitors, my sister updated our family group chat without me. When I listened to her voice notes, I heard her say, "She's better off gone anyway." I cried silently. My revenge was quiet but brutal. She didn't expect to lose custody of her own child. I'm Sabrina, 41 years old, born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I've been a nurse for almost 2 decades, married to my husband Adam for 15 years. We never had children, not for lack of trying. After years of failed IVF treatments, 2 miscarriages, and an endless cycle of hope and heartbreak, we made peace with being childless. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but Adam has always been my rock. My younger sister, Fiona, was always the opposite of me. She's 38, beautiful in that effortless way that draws people to her. Long blonde hair, flawless skin, a magnetic laugh that made people forgive her for nearly everything she did. She's always been the center of attention, even as children. My parents adored her. Not that they disliked me, but I was the responsible one. The good grades, the steady job, the practical choices. Fiona was the exciting one. The fun one. The one who needed a little extra understanding. She married young, at 22, to a man named Tyler. He was kind, successful, stable, everything you'd want for your younger sister. For a while, they seemed happy. They had a daughter, Emma, who became my world. But Fiona was never content. By her late 20s, she was restless, reckless, and eventually, she cheated on Tyler with one of his friends. The marriage imploded. Tyler moved out of state after the divorce, devastated, but left Emma with Fiona because the courts always seem to favor mothers unless something extreme happens. Even after the divorce, I stayed close to Fiona and Emma. I didn't always agree with Fiona's choices, but I loved my niece like my own child. I was her safe person, her sounding board, the one she called when she was scared or lonely. Then, earlier last year, everything changed. I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease completely out of the blue. One day I was working a double shift at the hospital, the next, I was barely able to walk. My body was attacking itself, and within weeks, I was hospitalized. Adam was away on a long-term overseas project for work when I was admitted. The timing couldn't have been worse. The hospital restricted visitors due to a surge in RSV cases, only immediate spouses were allowed limited access. So I spent weeks lying in that sterile hospital bed completely alone. At first, I thought my family would at least reach out, even if they couldn't visit. But days turned into weeks. The only person who regularly checked in was Adam, calling from thousands of miles away. My parents sent a few generic text messages. "Fiona?" Nothing. One evening, around my 3rd week in the hospital, I was lying awake, unable to sleep, when my tablet pinged with a notification. A new group chat had been created, family updates, but oddly, I wasn't included. My hospital tablet was still synced to my phone back at home, which is the only reason I even saw it. Out of curiosity, I opened it. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding as I scrolled through the messages. Fiona was giving regular updates about me to the rest of the family. Updates that made me sound like I was at death's door. "She's not responding well. The doctors are preparing us for the worst. There might not be much time left." I was shocked. My condition was serious, yes, but the doctors had been cautiously optimistic. Why was she making it sound like I was dying? Then came a voice note from Fiona. I hesitated before pressing play. I almost wish I hadn't. Her voice was calm, casual. "Honestly, guys, I think she's better off gone anyway. She's been miserable her whole life. I mean, she has no kids, no real family outside of Adam. Maybe it's time to let go. Sometimes these things are a blessing." I froze. My stomach twisted. I listened to it twice, hoping I had misheard. But no. She had said it. My own sister was sitting comfortably in her house, writing me off like my death would be a convenient solution. I lay there, my chest tightening, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. The machines beeped steadily next to me as I stared at the ceiling, unable to process the cruelty of it. It wasn't even about whether she wanted me dead. It was the way she said it. Cold. Dismissive. Like my life was some inconvenient burden on everyone else. The next morning, I refused breakfast. I barely spoke to the nurses. But deep inside, something had shifted. Something cold. Steady. I realized right then that if I survived, and I fully intended to, I wasn't going to confront her. No. I would let her think I was still the same passive, loyal older sister. And I would burn her life down quietly. Weeks later, I was discharged. My body is weak, but my mind is sharper than ever. Adam came home soon after. He immediately sensed something was off. "You've barely spoken since I got back," he said one evening, sitting beside me on the couch. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The chat. The voice note. My plan. He was silent for a long moment. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I've never been more sure of anything. The thing about Fiona was that she was already digging her own grave. She had been reckless for years, financially unstable, hopping between sugar daddies, leaving Emma with random babysitters while she went out drinking and networking. On paper, she presented herself as a hardworking single mother. But underneath, it was chaos. And most importantly, she had no idea I had been quietly gathering information for years. Babysitter names. Bank statements she had drunkenly bragged about. Photos from social media showing her at bars and clubs on nights she had told the court she was home with Emma. I had never planned to use any of it, until now. First, I reached out to Tyler. We hadn't spoken much since the divorce, but I had his number. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. He looked exhausted, wary, but curious. "I know you don't owe me anything," I began. "But I think you should know that Emma might not be safe with Fiona. And I can prove it." Tyler listened, at first skeptical. He had tried to fight for custody years ago and lost. But as I showed him everything, screenshots, time-stamped photos, witness statements, his face changed. This is enough?" he asked. "With a good attorney?" "Yes." And so, we began. Quietly. Carefully. We hired a private investigator to document Fiona's ongoing activities. We compiled statements from neighbors who had seen Emma wandering outside unsupervised. Babysitters who admitted Fiona would vanish for entire weekends. We even found evidence that some of the men Fiona was seeing had criminal records. 4 months, Fiona had no clue. She texted me like normal. Send me photos of Emma. Complained about her job. I responded like the loyal sister she believed I still was. But behind the scenes, everything was building. Every careless Instagram post, every reckless decision, every time she left Emma with someone shady, it was all being documented. And then came the day of the custody hearing. Fiona walked into that courtroom radiant, confident, dressed like a woman who believed she was untouchable. She glanced at me and smiled that condescending smile she'd mastered since we were kids. The hearing started, and for the first hour, she put on quite the show. She cried, talked about the struggles of single motherhood, about how hard she worked to provide for Emma. Then Tyler's lawyer began presenting our evidence. One by one, the photos, the text messages, the statements, the financial records came out. The witnesses testified. The private investigator shared detailed reports. And then, the final blow, Emma herself was called to speak, privately, with the judge. She spoke softly but clearly, sharing how often she felt scared, how strangers watched her while her mom went away for long periods. The judge's demeanor changed quickly after that. Fiona's confident smile disappeared. She started panicking, stuttering, trying to spin everything into innocent misunderstandings. But it was too late. The judge awarded Tyler full custody. Fiona was granted only supervised visits, pending further evaluation. I sat silently the entire time. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched as everything she'd built on lies came crashing down. And that was only the beginning. After the custody hearing, Fiona's world unraveled faster than even I had anticipated. In the days following the decision, she blew up my phone with texts and voicemails. The messages started as shock and desperation, quickly escalating into anger. "Sabrina, you have no idea what you've done. How could you betray your own sister like this? You ruined my life. For what? Jealousy?" I didn't respond to any of them. I let her scream into the void. The truth was, she had done this to herself long before I ever got involved. My parents called me a few days later. My mother's voice was tight, her words careful. "Your sister says you helped Tyler take Emma away from her," she said. "Is that true?" I paused for a moment, choosing my words. I helped the truth come out, I said quietly. That's all I did. There was a long silence. For the first time in my life, neither of them defended Fiona. They didn't praise her. They didn't rush to excuse her mistakes. They were just silent. I could hear the wheels turning in their heads. They knew. Deep down, they had always known. After that, they stopped calling as much. Not angry, more like ashamed. I suspected they were slowly coming to terms with just how much they had enabled Fiona's behavior over the years. But I didn't push. I had no energy to babysit their guilt. Fiona's financial situation started to crumble quickly once Tyler stopped paying child support directly to her and only handled expenses for Emma through a court-monitored account. Without Emma under her roof, Fiona lost access to multiple government subsidies, tax credits, and other support she had quietly depended on. Her boyfriend of the month bailed once her money dried up. Soon she was evicted from her fancy townhouse and moved into a small studio apartment on the outskirts of Beaverton. I heard all this through mutual acquaintances and quietly followed her public social media posts, which she hadn't thought to lock down. What surprised me the most wasn't how fast she fell, it was how loud she became as she fell. Fiona had always been a master at playing the victim. But this time, her usual tactics weren't landing. She began posting long rants online, blaming me, blaming Tyler, even blaming the judge. My evil sister stabbed me in the back and destroyed my family, she wrote. People don't realize how manipulative she really is. But it was too late. Fiona's former friends, many of whom she'd used and discarded over the years, didn't rally to her defense. They stayed silent or distanced themselves. People were tired of her drama. She had burned too many bridges long before this. Meanwhile, Emma was thriving. Tyler hired a child therapist to help her adjust. Her grades improved. She started piano lessons and joined a swim team. She even seemed lighter. One weekend, Emma stayed at our house while Tyler was out of town for work. We baked cookies together, watched movies, and stayed up late playing board games. As I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me and whispered, "Aunt Brie? Thank you for helping me." I froze for a moment. My throat tightened. "You're welcome, sweetheart." I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and walked out of the room feeling something I hadn't felt in months: peace. But Fiona wasn't done. In the following weeks, she tried every angle to fight back. She filed multiple appeals through the court system, all of which were dismissed. She tried to convince my parents to pressure Tyler, but they refused to get involved. Then came the real surprise. One evening, Adam and I were having dinner when my phone lit up. A private message from an unfamiliar number. I opened it and felt a familiar chill spread through my chest. "You think you've won, but you don't know what I know about you. Be careful, Sabrina." No name. No context. But I knew who it was. Fiona was trying to scare me. Trying to rattle me into reacting. Adam leaned over to look at my screen. "You think she'll do something stupid?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know. But I wouldn't put anything past her." Fiona had always been impulsive. Dangerous in her recklessness. She couldn't stand losing control, and now she was desperate. I knew it was only a matter of time before she escalated. And I was ready for it. She started showing up at places she knew I'd be, the grocery store, my gym, even outside my hospital on the days I worked. She wouldn't say anything. She'd just linger in the parking lot, pretending to scroll through her phone, stealing glances at me. It wasn't illegal, but it was unsettling. Eventually, I documented each incident. Every time she loitered nearby, I took photos, gathered security footage, and filed police reports. Portland PD took it seriously after a few repeated reports. A restraining order followed not long after. And yet, even with a legal order in place, Fiona kept circling like a vulture. She had lost custody, lost her home, lost her income, lost her dignity, but her obsession with me only grew. Her behavior finally took a more dangerous turn one rainy evening in early spring. I was driving home from work, exhausted after a double shift. The rain was coming down in sheets. As I pulled into my driveway, headlights suddenly flashed in my rearview mirror. A car pulled up too close behind me, blocking my way. My pulse shot up. My first thought was, Fiona. I stayed in my car, locked the doors, and quickly dialed Adam, who was already inside the house. "Don't come out," I whispered. "Stay inside." Call the police. Seconds later, Fiona stepped out of the car. She was soaking wet but didn't seem to care. She stood there, arms crossed, glaring at me like a wild animal backed into a corner. Through the windshield, I saw her mouth move. I couldn't hear her words, but I knew she was screaming at me. Blaming me. Accusing me. It wasn't until she tried to yank my door handle that I felt my hands start to shake. The police arrived minutes later. She was arrested on the spot for violating the restraining order. She screamed the entire time, accusing me of ruining her life, of stealing her daughter, of turning everyone against her. I watched from inside my locked car, not moving, not reacting. Just breathing. The next morning, my phone exploded again, this time with messages from distant relatives who had finally caught wind of everything. Some were shocked. Some were horrified. But most? They stayed silent. Cowards. Just like they had always been. Fiona was charged with harassment and stalking, but she was released on bail quickly. She wasn't done, not yet. But now, finally, people were seeing her for who she really was. The mask was slipping publicly in a way it never had before. And I knew this wasn't the final confrontation. Not yet. She still had cards left to play. But so did I. After Fiona's arrest for violating the restraining order, you'd think she might finally back off. But if anything, she became more dangerous after that night. The real shift came not long after her release. She went completely silent. No texts, no calls, no strange appearances. It was eerie. I almost preferred her manic rage to this sudden quiet. With Fiona, silence never meant surrender, it meant planning. Adam and I installed a full security system at the house. Cameras, alarms, reinforced locks. I started varying my routes to work. The hospital administration even allowed me to adjust my shifts temporarily, just in case. But despite everything, I never truly felt safe. Not with Fiona out there somewhere. About 2 weeks later, the next move came. I was called into HR at the hospital. My heart sank immediately. Sitting behind the desk was Karen, the head of HR, and next to her was one of the hospital's legal counsel. "We received an anonymous complaint," Karen said gently. "About you." I could feel my stomach twist. "About what?" The lawyer slid a folder toward me. Inside were printouts of screenshots, emails, and supposed evidence suggesting that I had been stealing narcotics from the hospital's supply, falsifying patient records, and harassing a patient's family. It was complete fiction. Sloppily fabricated, but damaging enough if you didn't look too closely. The timestamps on some of the emails coincided with days I was home recovering in the hospital myself, a clear impossibility, but to someone outside of my department, it looked serious. Karen was kind, she knew me well after years of working together, but her face was tight. "Sabrina, we're obligated to open a formal investigation. You'll be placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending the outcome." I nodded slowly. I didn't argue. I knew exactly who was behind this. Fiona wasn't going to just harass me directly anymore. She was going to try to take apart everything I had left, my job, my reputation, my livelihood. She wanted to poison every part of my life like a slow-acting venom. That night, I sat in my living room staring at the cease and desist letter I'd had my lawyer send Fiona weeks earlier, wondering how far she would take this. Adam sat next to me, quiet at first. "She won't stop," he finally said. "She's unraveling, Bree." "I know," I whispered. "I know she is." A part of me wanted to just let it burn out. She was already under legal pressure. She was alienating every person who ever gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she'd finally fall apart on her own. But another part of me knew better. Fiona never went down quietly. What she didn't know, however, was that her desperation had opened a new door for me. Through her anonymous complaint to the hospital, she left a digital trail. And my attorney was ready to capitalize on that. We filed an official petition to subpoena the records tied to the complaint. With the help of a digital forensic specialist, it didn't take long to trace the IP address back to Fiona's apartment. She'd used a VPN, but badly, her pattern of login locations and email accounts connected everything. The HR investigation was closed within 2 weeks after that. I was fully cleared, my record entirely intact. My department head called me personally to apologize for what I'd been put through. They even offered extra security measures at work. But clearing my name wasn't enough for me. This wasn't just about her trying to smear me. It was calculated career sabotage, malicious intent, professional defamation, and harassment that crossed every legal line imaginable. So, my attorney filed a civil lawsuit against her. Emotional distress, loss of income, defamation, harassment, legal fees, damages. The amount we were seeking would leave her financially gutted. And more importantly, it would put everything on legal record for the courts to see. Fiona would finally be exposed in a way she couldn't control or spin. When she was served the court papers, the explosion was immediate. She texted me for the first time in weeks. "Fiona, are you seriously suing your own sister? Are you this sick? Fiona, you won't get away with this. You think you're safe? You're not. Fiona, I'll ruin you first." I didn't respond. My attorney advised strict silence. Let everything unfold through the courts. The civil case filing triggered a new police investigation into her ongoing harassment. This time, there were more serious consequences. Multiple stalking incidents. The violation of the previous restraining order. The fraudulent HR complaint. It was stacking up into something much uglier. Meanwhile, she started trying to manipulate our parents again, playing the victim, spinning new sob stories. "Your sister is trying to make me homeless, Mom," she wailed on one recorded phone call I later obtained. "She took Emma, she ruined my life, and now she wants to destroy what little I have left." But my parents were finally reaching their limit. "We warned you years ago to get your act together, Fiona," my father said flatly. "We defended you when you didn't deserve it. We protected you when you were lying. But Sabrina has always told us the truth." I listened to that recording more than once. I couldn't believe my father had finally admitted it. That, in itself, felt like a small kind of justice. But Fiona? She wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next escalation came from a place I hadn't fully expected, Emma. One afternoon, Tyler called me in a panic. "She tried to pick Emma up from school." My blood ran cold. "The school caught it before she got very far," he said. "Security intervened, and she left before the police arrived." But Emma was terrified. Fiona wasn't allowed unsupervised contact under the custody ruling. What she tried to do was blatant, desperate, and dangerous. She wasn't just unraveling, she was becoming reckless. That attempted school pickup triggered a full emergency court hearing. The judge wasn't playing games anymore. Her visitation rights were immediately suspended. Full no-contact order issued. Any future contact attempts would result in felony charges. I wish I could say that finally stopped her. But I knew Fiona better than that. Her life was now completely falling apart, and that made her more dangerous than ever. The school incident was the beginning of the end for Fiona. After she tried to take Emma, the court's patience ran out. She was no longer seen as a struggling single mother who had made some bad choices, now she was a danger to her own child. Even her lawyer, the one who had been representing her through the earlier appeals, withdrew from her case. She couldn't pay him anymore, and frankly, she'd made herself legally radioactive. For a few weeks, she disappeared completely. No online posts, no appearances, no contact. The silence was different this time. Not calculating, defeated. But I knew Fiona. I knew she wouldn't disappear without one last desperate move. It finally came about a month later, when I received a certified letter at my home. Not from Fiona, but from her latest business venture. It was a threat of a countersuit. Fiona had filed a civil suit against me, claiming I had engaged in harassment, defamation, emotional abuse, and financial sabotage. She claimed I had orchestrated a vendetta to steal her daughter, ruin her reputation, and leave her destitute. It was so absurd that Adam actually laughed when he read through the document. "She really doesn't understand how deep she's buried herself, does she?" he said. "No," I said quietly. "She never did. But now? Now I'm going to end this for good." This was the moment I had been waiting for. See, up until now, my revenge had been mostly defensive, protecting Emma, clearing my name, stopping Fiona from damaging my life. But this countersuit? It gave me a golden opportunity to push her into the one place where her manipulations couldn't save her: full public exposure. The court scheduled a joint hearing to review both civil suits. Unlike the previous family court hearings, this was fully public, open records, media access, and far more scrutiny. In the weeks leading up to it, my attorney and private investigator went into overdrive. We gathered everything: her falsified HR complaint against me, the restraining order violations, the stalking incidents, her attempt to abduct Emma from school, her financial fraud. She'd quietly committed benefits fraud while claiming subsidies as a single parent while living well above her reported income, and perhaps most damning of all, recordings of her previous voice notes, including that first one in the family group chat. Honestly, guys, she's better off gone anyway. Every thread she had pulled over the years was finally going to be stitched into one complete, undeniable portrait. The day of the hearing arrived. I'll never forget the look on Fiona's face when she walked into that courtroom. She looked older than her 38 years, thinner, her hair brittle and flat, her once bright eyes darting nervously around the room. She hadn't expected this to become so public. She was dressed in what she probably thought made her look put together, but her desperation clung to her like a second skin. The proceedings were long, detailed, and brutally thorough. Her attorney tried to spin every accusation, but there was simply too much evidence. My attorney calmly laid out the timeline, the financial records, the testimony from school officials, former babysitters, former landlords, even former friends who had finally come forward. Then came the playback of the voice note. The judge listened silently. When it finished, you could feel the weight of the room shift. "This is your sister, whom you allege has targeted you for years," the judge said slowly, staring directly at Fiona. "And yet this is how you speak of her during her hospitalization?" Fiona stammered. It was taken out of context. The judge raised a hand, cutting her off. "Ms. Cross, context isn't your problem here. Credibility is." When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I calmly described how I had tried for years to support my sister, through her marriage, her divorce, her financial struggles. How I loved my niece like my own child. And how, while I fought for my life, my sister tried to erase me. I didn't seek revenge, I finished quietly. I sought safety. For myself. For my niece. This lawsuit is not about revenge. It's about accountability. The judge excused us while they deliberated. It didn't take long. The countersuit Fiona filed against me was dismissed entirely. The original civil suit I had filed was ruled entirely in my favor. Fiona was ordered to pay full damages, including emotional distress, defamation, legal fees, and punitive damages for malicious intent. The financial sum was devastating for her. Even if she declared bankruptcy, which she eventually would, the judgment would follow her for years. The judge didn't stop there. In a final statement, he made it clear that if Fiona made any future attempts to contact me or Emma outside of legal channels, criminal charges would follow immediately. The satisfaction wasn't in the money. It was in the permanence. Her smear campaigns, her manipulations, her gaslighting, all of it was officially on record now. Not just for the court but for anyone who might cross paths with her in the future. She could never hide behind her lies again. The final humiliation came a few days later. Fiona's eviction notice from her latest apartment had gone through. She was being forced to leave. She posted a desperate GoFundMe online titled, "Help Me Rebuild My Life After Family Betrayal." She wrote long-winded sob stories about how her evil sister had destroyed her out of jealousy. The fundraiser barely raised a few $100s. Most of the comments were vicious, calling her out for the truth that was now public. People shared news articles from the hearing. Her old friends publicly disavowed her. Employers saw the coverage. She was blacklisted from several jobs she'd tried to apply for afterward. For the first time in her life, she couldn't spin her way out. And finally, my parents stopped protecting her entirely. They made a quiet but very clear statement when they cut off financial assistance and told her directly, "You've made your choices, Fiona. We've defended you long enough. Don't contact us again unless you're ready to take responsibility for your actions." As for Emma, she blossomed. She no longer flinched when unexpected cars pulled into driveways. She slept through the night without nightmares. She grew confident again, joined her school's science club, made real friends, and started piano competitions. She was free. And so was I.